I'm sure a few more people are going to join us, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce Carey for our last webinar. So thank you all for joining us today with Carey Wallace. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can drop them into the chat feature. Carey and I will be monitoring it, and she'll answer them at the appropriate time. The webinar today is approved for an hour of CE. At the end of the presentation, y'all know the drill. We'll have a QR code that pops up. I'll drop a link into the chat as well if you want to click on it, fill out that form, and we will file that 1 hour of CE credit for you and let you know when that is available. I'm sure I don't need to tell y'all again, but for those of you who have not joined us previously, Carey is the owner of AgencyFocus, which is a company she created to help independent agents understand their value and make informed decisions for their agency. If you missed our first 3 webinars, we do have the recordings available on our YouTube channel, and I will send those out to you in our follow-up email after this. So today, Carey is going to dive into the wild world of staffing in the insurance industry, where remote work, retirement, and robots are shaking things up. If you ever wondered how to attract top talent or how automation could be your secret weapon, you're in the right place. We'll uncover how agencies are staying ahead of redefining their teams with virtual assistants, bots, and innovative technology. So get ready to level up your team and your agency's efficiency, and let's get started.
Thank you, Kathleen. This might be one of my absolute favorite topics, only because people are your largest asset, but they're also your largest expense. And they're so incredibly important inside your agency. There's a lot of agents that are rethinking how they deploy their team, who's on their team, and what jobs each of those people do within their agency. So, there's no 2 ways around it. Our world has changed multiple times, and every single time we've gone through an industrial revolution, the whole thing has been about how do we create efficiency, how do we create capacity, how do we do things more efficiently. And honestly, the industrial revolution, the 4th industrial revolution that we're part of today, is no different. And in every single time we've gone through a industrial revolution, people are fearful that they're going to lose their jobs. But what actually happens are jobs are redefined. The way in which we work is redefined, and new jobs are created. So this is the way we should look at it as well. The way we do business is going to change. It's already changing. And those that choose to do it the way they've always done it will struggle to stay connected and as efficient and effective as they could be, just like someone who's still trying to do something like they did in the 1960s. So it is upon us, and everyone's going to take on these changes in different ways and different speeds, but there is no question about it. It's not going to slow down. It will actually speed up. In fact, I believe that we live in a society today, which I lovingly used to call a microwave society, where we want everything as fast as possible. But someone corrected me and said, we don't actually live in a microwave society. We live in an air fryer society, where we want things fast, we want things accurate, and we want them good. We want it to taste good and actually be crispy and not be a mushy mess. So no question about it. I think we would all say, as consumers, we are absolutely have the expectation that we want things fast and accurate. Your customers feel the same way about you. The question is, how can we go about doing that? The other thing to note is, it was hard for me to believe, because I'm in a generation that understood what it was like. I'm in Generation X, so I understood what it was like before Google, before we could walk in a room and shout out a question and have something just magically answer us. I knew what it was like to actually use an encyclopedia, which is ridiculous when you think about it today, how out of date that information was, but that's how we actually found out about things. So 75% of the population today doesn't know what a Google life was like, what it was like before Google. So, we are the minority in this situation, and the majority of the consumers their expectations are that fast, accurate, and timely. No question about it. The other thing that I would tell you is, not only are we thinking things need to be fast, accurate, and timely, we actually are becoming to have this expectation that it should be predictive. As much as we complain about Big Brother listening when our phone is there, and then all of a sudden the ads that we're talking about come into our feed, it works because many people actually purchase off of those ads that are at the right place at the right time. When you're thinking about something, there's a, I would challenge you, are you fast, accurate, and predictive about what your customers need? And if not, hopefully I share some things today that allows you to think about how you could be that. Because again, expectations are changing. They are not slowing down, they're speeding up. And we are getting more and more comfortable with the fact that there is a predictive nature in all of society, not just in what we do. I shared a story recently when I did this presentation live about my own daughter who had some health issues this past December. And I used to be anti-technology. I didn't like that whole Big Brother listening to me. That actually made me really uncomfortable. But my daughter actually had a stroke earlier this year in December, and she was in the hospital. We actually all thought it was a migraine. It was really troubling to hear that she had something so severe happen. She's fine, but she got to the point where she was so nervous she didn't want to leave the hospital because they were monitoring her, and she knew sitting there she felt just fine, but her heart rate was racing. Well, when they said it was time to go home, she was fearful if she didn't have all these wires on her, how was she going to know when her heart rate was doing that? And how would she be comfortable that another stroke wouldn't happen? And the doctor said the best thing you could do is buy an iWatch. Literally wear an iWatch because it monitors her heart rate, her blood pressure, and is so predictive and can alert her if something's happening. She was never a person that would have any kind of technology, no Fitbit, no nothing. And it gave her great comfort to know that she could have a technology that was predictive that might prevent something from getting serious. So my point is, we're all at different stages, but we do need to realize that society is moving that way. No question about it. There's also some factors inside the industry that are changing how agencies have to do business. The number one that's on the minds of everyone is carriers. This hard market, what carriers are doing, it's changing the body of work that you have to do inside your agency, whether we like it or not. Technology is very prevalent. It used to be you could choose whether or not you wanted to adopt technology, but I think we're in a time frame that if you don't adopt technology, you will be competing against those agents that have done it, can be far more efficient, far more predictive, far more able to reach more of their clients in a timely manner versus ones that are not. I was just at the Hawksoft Hug conference, and one of the agents in the audience raised their hand and said, for new business, we are so inundated with holding onto our book that we're telling new business we can get to you in 3 weeks with a quote. That is not the way you're going to get right new business. And unfortunately, other agents in the room told them, we'll happily take your business because we've got the infrastructure and the processes and procedures in order to be reactive to what agents need. The hard markets created so much remarket work that efficiency is no longer a thing that you can think about having. You've got to create it. You've got to tier your customers and figure out which ones you're going to handle first in order to make sure your retention is solid. And it's not a one size fits all. You've got to be able to stratify what you're doing. So for all those reasons, and the fact that after COVID, we seriously changed what the hiring market looks like inside our industry, where people could work remote. People wanted to potentially do fractional work. There's this gig economy where everybody's thinking about their roles in a different way. The way we think about our team has to evolve. It's the largest asset. It is your largest expense. In order to create those efficiencies, we've got to rethink how our team interacts with each other. Never mind the fact that there are so many people inside the insurance industry, not just owners, but CSRs, producers, that are at or nearing retirement age. Talent is by far one of the largest concerns behind the market. The Agency Universe study just came out. Number one concern was what carriers are doing to, hold up their bargain or hold up what they've said they're going to do and the predictability of that. Number two is what are carriers going to do in order to satisfy the needs in the personal lines market. Number three is attracting and keeping great talent. I've been in this industry for 16 years, and that Agency Universe study, one or two is always attracting and keeping great talent, because we've got a large number of people that are getting ready to exit the industry. And we have this knowledge gap between those that are exiting, those that are coming in. Talent continues to be a concern, which is why this conversation about how to leverage the talent you've got and make sure they're doing the highest and best work that they can, and you're able to move administrative or repetitive tasks into handling them a different way in order to make sure that you're getting as much as you possibly can out of the talented people that you have inside your agency. The last major factor is, our M&A market might be the strongest it's ever been. While it's not the highest number of announced deals, that was actually in 2021, I believe, or 2020, actually 2021, but multiples have remained very strong. There's a ton of agents that are thinking about this, my revenue might be the highest it's been in 5 years because the market's hardened and we've had rate increases. I've also been able to grow. My staff is changing. This might be my high, and it might be time for me to exit. So there's a lot of pressure for those that are looking to potentially figure out what is the right time for me, especially if they've waited a little bit too long. They might be thinking, I will miss my high, and they're thinking about exiting. And it's also one of the best opportunities for agencies that want to grow by acquisition. But you can't be a great buyer unless you've got this infrastructure set up and you're able to figure out how to create that capacity. Those are the most sought after and the most successful buyers are the ones that have the infrastructure. They've leveraged technology. They're thinking about their staff different. They've got the capacity to bring on a book that maybe isn't as well managed, and maybe from an agency that hasn't figured that out, so they can reap the benefit of putting that agency into their structure in order to create profitability. So there's a lot of factors that make it really, really important that an agency think about, how do I make sure I leverage technology and data, marry that with the strong relationships that I have in order to be incredibly strong. Never once in this whole conversation do I want you to hear that I think relationships aren't important, but relationships plus data plus technology is really what the agent of the future and the agent of today, what's making them successful, because they're able to leverage their people in order to create capacity, create efficiency that leads to growth and profitability, which are the two biggest factors in the valuation of any business. So remember, if you can create capacity, you're going to find room to grow. If you can do it efficiently, you're going to increase your profit, and therefore you're going to be far ahead of those that are not thinking about it. So let's focus on one part of the agency where you can think about this differently and create some capacity and some efficiency, and that's your team. So the first thing, I started talking about this topic probably 5 years ago, and I would go to state associations and ask the question, is anyone using a VA inside their agency? And a VA is literally an employee that you get through a contract company, or you can go direct, and they are in a different country. Their compensation rate is far lower than anybody in this country. And they're hired to do repetitive tasks. They might do your appointment setting. They might help you create certificates of insurance. They might actually do the research to get ready for a remarket. If there's a complete process to follow The VA can do some administrative work, take that load off of your licensed agents or licensed CSRs or account managers to create capacity. When I first started asking this question, I would get blank stares and people saying that absolutely not. The last conference I was at, when I asked that question, half the hands went up in the room. So this is more and more becoming very widespread, and it's creating quite a bit of profitability inside an agency. So I've put together a little demonstration of what this might look like. And before you tell me a CSR doesn't cost that in your area, it actually, that is a pretty good number for what a CSR, right? You know, a brand new CSR with no experience might cost. So the old model was, as the book grows and you need capacity in order to manage the book, you would add people based on the revenue per employee metric inside your agency. If you're a personal lines agency, that revenue per employee number will be a little bit lower than a commercial lines agency. But regardless, as you need capacity, you would just add another CSR or add another account manager. If instead you added a virtual assistant that was able to take the body of work off of all of your account managers or CSRs, the difference between hiring a CSR and a virtual assistant is roughly $30,000. That savings in $30,000, which we're just talking about costs right now, would drop to your bottom line as profit. And that profit, if we were valuing your agency for an internal multiple of 7.5 times EBITDA, would relate to about a $200,000 increase in the value of your agency. Just one decision in hiring could lead to a difference of $200,000 in the value of your agency, all the way to about $280,000. Think about it if you did this over and over and over again. And what's not contemplated in this example is the increase because of that capacity that you've created for your CSRs that now could account round, or they could cross-sell, or they could do, and actually, instead of doing administrative tasks, they could go deeper with your customers in order to actually increase the amount of policies by your current customers, not new sales, but they could actually do different work that they're designed to do and actually qualified to do, but they didn't have time to do when they're doing administrative work. So that creates capacity, it creates efficiency, and it creates profitability inside an agency. The question is, how do we do that? And you know, I have actually an entire presentation about if you're going to bring a VA onto your agency, what is the process you could do? I want to quickly talk through that because I went to an agency's office and we actually talked about it. He said, you know, I'm not 100% sure how this will integrate with my current processes. And I said, great, let's do a group exercise with your staff where they have to, on a whiteboard, everybody, you know, has whiteboards across the room. Everybody listed the things that they do every single day. What are the repetitive tasks that you do every single day? And then they estimated how many times a day they did it and how much time it took them to do that work. And together, as a personal lines team and a commercial lines team, they summarized the work that they did that was repetitive and came up as a group with what they thought they might be able to outsource and how much time that would actually save them in their day. Then they talked about what that would look like in a process-wise. How would we get the work to someone else? How would we get it back? Would they have to be in the agency management system? All of that. We discussed it as a group. And at that point, everybody saw the opportunity rather than being nervous, this is going to take my job away. They then saw, hey, those benchmarks that I have for my performance on cross-selling and account rounding, I now might be able to get those bonuses because I have more time to work in a different way. Or I might be able to get to those remarkets in a very different way if I've got someone to help me with that, rather than me feeling like I'm drowning in the work that's quadrupled over the last 2 years during the hard market. So the whole point is, if you ask your team what are the things that is taking them so much time and that's repetitive, it's much easier to identify it than sitting in the owner's seat and trying to figure it out yourself. that agency actually ended up hiring 3 VAs, 2 on their personal line side, 1 on their commercial line side. And all 3 have stayed in the agency for about 18 months. And that agency has grown double digits, where they were around a 6% growth rate when we first started it. They were able to grow double digits over this past 18 months, which is pretty exciting to see. That agency also operates at about a 40% profitability, which is pretty exciting as well. So anyway, so that is VAs. The second thing is maybe it's not a human being that's going to do this work. Maybe there are opportunities to automate inside your agency to cover the same kind of work. So there's on a recent study, they actually said that most occupations, 60% of occupations have at least 30% of automatable activities, meaning things that are repetitious that you would be able to program someone or program a bot to do that kind of work. And I know this sounds crazy. It's not really a robot, but it is a program that types in and says, at this point, log into this, this system. Once you hit this, go and log in here, download this information, upload the information into our system. And the whole time it's no human being doing it. It is an automated program that runs the same program over and over and over again. And these are 4 agents that are using bots, repetitive process automation inside their agency that they've programmed to do repetitive tasks. The first one is Jeff Roy. He runs Excalibur Insurance out of Canada, and he ran on Applied, and he created a bot inside his agency that would download every single day and compare inside his agency management system what's on the download, what is in his agency management system, and reconcile that. That used to take 2 people in his staff to do every single morning. They did that from 9 in the morning until noon. Once he used the bot, those people that were in reconciliation only had to address those things that aired out, that the program wouldn't address. He went from 2 people doing it, I think something around 4 hours a day, to less than an hour of his people's time working on that task. There's actually a case study that says how many man hours it saved and what it turned into for what those people could be redirected in order to do different work inside the agency. The second agent is Rob Bowen. He's a small agency. As you can imagine, Jeff Roy, I think he has got a staff of about 40 on his team. Rob Bowen, I think, has a staff of 3. He uses a product called Adapt API. Super simple. It actually logs into all of his carriers and downloads any of the changes, and creates an activity inside his agency management system for his people to follow up on. So rather than having someone log in, download the report, and put it into his AMS system for him, it's actually done by a bot every single day, and creates tasks or suspenses for his people to follow up with. Angela Trimble is an agency in the middle of Kansas. And the reason I'm telling you this is I don't want you to think it's just large agents that are doing this, or super, metropolitan agencies that are doing this. These are a really crazy cross-section of agents across the world or across the country that are thinking about it differently and utilizing this technology. So Angela Trimble, she actually uses the same company as Jeff Roy, but her bot actually does all of the remarket work. So it goes and downloads, compares what the current coverage is with all of the potential new coverages to basically say what are the differences, and spits out a report for her agents to be able to be knowledgeable in that remarket conversation. It does it the same way every single time, and it is about 85% of the time is super helpful for the person. That's also really important to know. Not everything's going to fit nice and neat into a process, but for them, having 85% of the work done was far better than not having any of it done automatically. Mike Fusco, I actually had him on my podcast, and it was the number 2 most listened to podcast that we did the first year that we started podcasting, because he was talking about the 4 separate bots that he put inside his agency. And some of them are very simple tasks that, again, his people didn't have to do the work. For Mike, one was to set up a new account. He had a pretty large personal lines book that was generated by his online presence. And so when he would get a lead, the bot would actually set up the account the exact same way every single time inside his agency management system, as well as inside his Zoom or his CRM. So a lot of times a bot can do the swivel activities. If you have to do data entry here and then also data entry here, that's considered a swivel. It's the same data in multiple places. So you do not have to do duplicative work. The bot will actually do it for you. He also has a bot that handles his cancel non-pays the exact same way. So he's not inconsistent as a team in doing this work. The byproduct for all of them is these things that they are automating are done exactly the same way, exactly the same time. So you can imagine their data is very clean because there is no inconsistency on their team on how they're handling each of these tasks. It's being done the same way across the entire agency, which is also a side benefit. The daily reconciliations of the things we just talked about is the biggest time saver, the biggest thing that you can think of that might change the way you do business. And so just think about it. Here's some of the organizations that will create bots. Adapt API. Quandary is the company that both Jeff Roy and Angela Trimble are the 2 that used Quandary. The one that I said that Rob Bowen was using was Adapt API, and Mike Fusco was using the company called Alleviant. So there's a lot of different choices out there. Adapt API, I believe it's actually off the shelf. There's no development involved. You can reach out and I can connect you with agents that are doing this so you can get cost and volume requirements in order to make this happen. But this is the way things are moving in order to automate and be far more efficient. And the whole point, remember, is to allow your people to deal with those relationships and really deal with their knowledge about coverage rather than doing data entry, that 30% of the work that's really not their highest and best. The whole idea is to get other ways to accomplish those roles or those jobs within the agency than using your scarce resources, people that are far more better off doing other things. No question about it in my mind, technology will optimize the way people will work. We're not talking about replacing people. We're talking about optimizing them. None of these agencies got rid of any person on their team. They reallocated them to do different work that led to them growing differently, their profitability being different. And as their book grow, maybe not having to add yet another person or adding at the same rate that they would, which is also solving this huge gap that we have where talent is so difficult to find. So I did say that by doing this, sometimes the data is cleaner inside an agency. And this is a data challenge that happens a lot as I'm valuing agencies. And I just wanted to point it out. So we all know that AMS systems, when you download from your carrier, it comes in as new, and it means new to the carrier. If you do not have a process inside your agency to change that new to a rewrite, if it's a piece of business you've already written, but it's new to the carrier, but not new to your agency, that could be misclassified inside your agency as new. If you have producers that get 50% new, 30% renewal, that creates a difference if it's wrong and you're using those reports of about $12K. If we're talking about an agency that their new business is $160,000 and it really was 50% of it was rewrites, so or 80,000 of that was rewrites misclassified as new, and there was no process to check it, That could be a difference of 12K or a value of the agency of 100K. Multiply that by 5 producers, we got a problem. Like, it is one of the things when agencies are buying and selling where there's opportunity because there's dirty data. Someone who has a great system in place will capitalize on this, where an agency that didn't will actually be leaving money on the table. So it's super important to have processes in place in order to make sure that you have clean data, that you're operating appropriately, that it's consistent across your agency, and it's going to get more and more important as we go. I put this together because a lot of times when I talk about this, remember, I value agencies, so I don't want you to spend an exorbitant amount of money on technology or marketing unless it's driving outcomes. So this was put together to say what kind of cost is associated with the tools that we're talking about. So I used an example of an agency that I work with to say, what is their monthly and annual spend on the products that they're using that allows them to be predictive, have data insights, have a sales process inside their agency. And this particular agency, this was their tech stack. They had Hawksoft. They used Donna as their agency intelligence, or, some of their insights in order to be predictive. They used Agency Zoom as their CRM. They connected a lot of their technology through Zapier. They used Bridge for their phones, and they used Slack to communicate with each other. Annually, they spent about $19,146. This agency is right around 850 in revenue. It represented about 2% of their total revenue. And, no, actually, this is a $1 million agency. It's roughly 2% of their annual revenue. And best practices says agencies should spend somewhere between 3 and 4% of their revenue on their technology. So my point is, you can have technology inside this industry for less than what the benchmark is that actually works really, really well. I don't want you to think it's out of the realm of possibility to be able to use some of these predictive technologies to have insights. So I'm going to talk about Donna. It's one solution. There's actually Donna, there's Neon, there's Enable, there's Agency KPI. There's a lot of technology out there. There's actually analytics inside some AMSs that you can utilize in order to get that predictive. Going from the phone rings and I respond to it, or proactive where I've tiered my customers and now I'm reaching out in a more sophisticated way. I'm not waiting for the phone to ring, but I'm reaching out to, can I mine the book of business and actually figure out which customers are the most urgent for me to handle using some data analytics. So I'm going to show you an example of what predictive might look like inside your agency. So this is Donna. It's an analytics tool that sits on top of your AMS or your CRM. And it basically measures how your customer feels about you. This is one of the many things that it does. It gives your customers a centimeter score. So if you have phones that are voice over IP, you do your email through your agency management system, and all the activity through your CRM of how you're engaging with your customer, it actually looks at all those interactions. It listens to the phone calls for positive or negative words. It reads your emails and looks for positive or negative words. It actually says how many claims, how many times did they call in, how many touches have you had with this person, or is it really highly active, or is it almost not at all? And what do they think about you? Are they positive overall, or are they negative overall? And each of the people inside your agency, for the body of work that they cover, gets a centimeter score every single day, and some predictions on whether or not this customer is ready to leave or a raving fan. So that is incredibly powerful. It's like taking an NPS score, a net promoter score, and making it real time rather than a one question. And really, if you're thinking about it, if your people are incented based on your retention rate, and they have a tool like this where they know there's someone that potentially is upset with the agency, and they can immediately rectify it by reaching out, they're going to be far more effective in reaching that potential retention rate than if they didn't have this kind of tool. So it's, in many ways, if you're thinking about attracting talent, having something like this in place to say, hey, listen, we're not just going to say, go for it. Here's 400 customers, do your best and figure it out. We're actually going to say, we're going to put some tools in place that'll allow you to know where to start and who to focus on first in order to achieve those goals. I think about my 26-year-old daughter, and if she was in an agency, she'd be far more likely to pick someone who has this kind of tool in place versus one that's not. The other thing that I'll tell you is the centimeter doesn't always get it right. So there's this function that says you as the human being can go in and say, yes, you got that right. That was a negative encounter. Or no, you misread this word. That wasn't a negative encounter, and you can correct it. And it learns over time whether or not it's getting it right. It's getting smarter and smarter and smarter, kind of like a chat GPT. And remember, it is only as good as you, as the user, telling it whether it got it right or wrong. The second thing is it can look across your book of business and look for patterns or policyholder behavior to identify cross-sell and upsell opportunities. It also marries external data with your internal data. For instance, this particular agency writes a lot of classic cars. Well, it actually used the publicly available registration data with the people inside the agency to say, do they have any cars registered in their names that we don't insure? So it looks across the book of business for commonality. This kind of customer has these coverages. Here are these customers that are similar. They're in the similar SIC code, but they don't have all the coverages. They might suggest to the account manager or the CSR or the producer to look into it. Is this a potential upsell opportunity? And then it uses external data to say, hey, we actually insure their house, their car, their, we have a flood policy, we've got an umbrella, but they have classic cars that we don't write. You might want to ask them about it. It looks at some things that they write publicly on Facebook. Like, there's lots of data sources that it can use. Again, it will change the retention. It'll also change the policies per customer, and it'll also strengthen your book of business to make it more sticky for your agency to hold on to those clients. It also can say, what are the ways in which we want to interact with our customers differently? And so it can look at the customer profile inside Donna and say, you can put some automations in place that say, if there's a high centimeter, the renewal's most likely, very likely. We don't have to do anything. It needs no human interaction. We can run the automated renewal process using email, text, and ringless voicemail. If the centimeter score is, from 100 to 75, we might need to do there's an upsell opportunity. We can create a different type of engagement to talk to that customer. And if there's a low centimeter score, the renewal probability is low, or we need account changes that would be assigned to a person to handle. That is not an automated process at all, but that is the one that needs the human who understands this account in a much more serious way. They then went on, if something went through an automated process, it's automatically next time around a human to make sure that you are touching all of your customers in a timely fashion. But this is the kind of way people are dealing with efficiency and capacity and still being able to work their book of business in a pretty significant way. The results are, by having this customer experience centimeter score and putting a process like this in place for this particular agency, they saw a 20% increase in their customer experience benchmark once their people knew and were able to intervene and talk to those people. a 3.5% increase in policies per customer because those opportunities were being identified and put in front of their people's faces in order to suggest those things without having them be able to have to know and mind that themselves, and a 5% increase in retention over a 6-month period. So it can be incredibly powerful if you are predictive in your work, not just reactive. And honestly changes the way the whole team works. When we talk about retention, everybody focuses on new business, and I'm a huge fan of new business. But when you think about the value of an agency, the value of an agency is both new business and retention to get to overall growth. And honestly, it is so much easier to hold on to a customer than it is to find a new customer, that having a solid retention plan in place is so incredibly important, and it's incredibly powerful. So for instance, we just said that this agency had a 5% increase in their retention. So if you were a $2 million agency and you were at an 87% retention and we got you to a 93% retention, that gap between 87 and 93 is $120,000. If we were just going to value the agency and that dropped to the bottom line to profit, that value gap is $900 to $1 million in value of that agency. That is incredibly impactful. The cost of Donna is something around, I think, $6,000 to $8,000 a year. Don't quote me. But my whole point is money well spent if it can change the way you hire, you attract talent, and the performance of the agency is a pretty significant movement. And again, that's one example. But my point is, once you have data and technology and relationships, you can see how powerful it becomes inside an agency. And it's not an overnight thing. Your data is going to be dirty. Some of it's going to tell you the wrong stuff. Like, it is a cultural shift to move in this direction. But the agents that are doing it are seeing massive, massive changes inside their agency and their buying power as they're acquiring agencies. The last thing I'll tell you is more like that big brother thing. And again, I told you, as a human being, I was super uncomfortable with someone's listening or watching me and thinking about what we need to do until my daughter had her health issue. And then I thought, I appreciate that there's things out there that can be predictive. And if it can help her, I'm all for it, right? And if that means that there's an ad in my Facebook feed and I buy something, then hallelujah, because I hate to shop. Well, Neon Alerts is basically a tool that allows you to monitor either your current customers or your prospects. And it notifies you if anyone in the household goes online in any major search engine and types in looking for insurance. So basically, you could put your current personal lines accounts into Neon Alerts and absolutely get a warning that they're searching for something insurance-based. That would then immediately notify your team to reach out to that customer and just do a check-in and say, hey, was thinking about you, wondered if there's anything that we can do for you. We wanted to check in and make sure everything's okay. You are where they are when they're thinking about it, and maybe could potentially have someone not leave your agency. And for a lead, that they're actually a hot lead if they're searching for it, and you can be available as quickly as possible to answer that need. Because we know when people are searching online, they typically do not purchase online. They make a phone call to the first agency that comes up, not necessarily the agency that they're with. So this allows you to have quite a significant retention tool, as well as potentially a higher hit rate or close ratio on your leads that you're purchasing or leads that you get. So the result of being predictive is an increase in some new sales. The ROIs increase from leads that are purchased. You can have a more focused staff rather than every lead's the same. Now we can prioritize, and potentially a higher success rate and a higher retention rate. Like it is the way our life is moving, whether you like it or not. The reality is you'll be competing against agents that are utilizing this. And this is actually a pretty low cost, high impact tool that you can utilize. Again, it's called Neon Alerts. Happy to connect you if that's something you're interested in. Just know the gap between the agents that are thinking differently about their team or thinking differently about technology and data and those that are not is getting wider and wider and wider. All these factors that are impacting our industry aren't going to go away anytime soon. I don't think we're going to wake up one day and all of a sudden feel like we are perfectly staffed and have all kinds of capacity. Our customers are going to continue to have the same expectations they have about how fast they want food, how fast they want to shop online, how fast they want information. That's never going to go away. My kids are never going to look at an encyclopedia for information ever. They're not going to a library and going through a Rolodex to find a book. They're going to stand in my kitchen and ask a question and expect the answer to be said immediately and to be accurate. So we have to believe that that is going to impact us as an industry. And I am not suggesting the complexity of insurance won't change that expectation some, but it will not completely negate us from thinking that we want information well. That same doctor that worked on my daughter all thought it was a migraine, and they went to crowdsourcing information to look at her symptoms to come up with, no, this actually was, the test told them it was a stroke, but the cause was something that they actually went and looked at lots of people's notes, basically a closed chat GPT that doctors utilize to put the same symptoms in to see the causes. And you know what? I'm okay with that because this particular doctor is on Hilton Head. That the average age that he works on is not 26. So he did not understand the symptoms, and it would have taken a lot longer for him to be able to diagnose it. So even something as specialized as medicine, they are leveraging the tool, the power of knowledge across a wide variety of people. We will be too. I'm not suggesting we don't have to be super thoughtful in the way that we do it, but that is the way our society is moving. The agents that are doing this are redefining the benchmarks. We get to see a lot of agents. We typically work with about 250 agents that we value over the course of a year. Those that are leveraging these kinds of things are changing their growth rate. They're changing their profitability rates. They're changing their retention rates, the amount of new business that they're writing. Their revenue then per employee looks different. Their cost per customer looks different. And those that are using sales tools like an Agency Zoom or a HubSpot or a Salesforce, they know the time it takes to quote and bind. They know their close ratios, the time it takes to resolve a claim, their growth with each of their carriers, and they can make strategic decisions about the body of work and how to grow their agency in a different way than those that do not have this line of sight. It really is changing how we're doing business. And while the adoption is still pretty low for some of these analytics tools, the adoption of utilizing virtual assistants, I can tell you, is easily doubled in the last year just from the people that I've talked to. I anticipate the same will happen with these kinds of technologies as the cost comes down and the differential continues to grow. If you want to talk about any of these things, personally, I'm a partner with Louisiana, and any agent gets free 30 minutes to talk about anything they want to talk about. It's a service that we do for all of your members. It's absolutely included in your membership. I'm happy to do it anytime. If you want to ask questions now about anything that we talked about, I'm happy to answer those as well. It's a lot. I feel like
that is so much. Like, it's mind-boggling what's available. It's just crazy. But I didn't know that about your daughter. I mean, how crazy. And it's amazing how far technology has come and how they're able to just dive differently into it and not just relying on their bookmarks and their education, but be able to go further. So I'm so thankful they were able to figure out what they were doing. And I remember the days of encyclopedias. I remember going to the library and scanning and copying pages from the encyclopedia to do book reports and all that kind of stuff. And my kids will never understand the pain of
never ever. Like they live in a different
God.
world for sure.
Completely different world. And gone are the days where you have those conversation and arguments about like a topic. Now it's just like Alexa's sitting right there and you just settle that argument that quickly. It's not nearly as fun, right?
That's true. That's true.
But oh my gosh, that's wonderful information. Thank you so much for all of that. We will send out the slides and the replay from this webinar to everyone after this. I'm going to share my screen and pop up the QR, or I can let me just drop the link in there so that they can.
You can share your screen. I just unshared.
Okay. All right. Great. Hold on 1 second. Up there.
Awesome.
And perfect. So here's the QR code if y'all want to scan that. I also just put a link in the chat for everyone if you would rather do that again. Click on that. Carey, what a pleasure it's been to have you for these last 4 webinars, and you share your knowledge on all of these different topics. It's been such a pleasure. I know our members have appreciated it and have learned so much. And y'all, this is not the last time that you're going to see her. I know I've mentioned it the last few, but she is coming to our Women in Insurance Conference along with Lindsay, her daughter, in April, and we cannot wait to have them there to hear more about her journey through her career and everything that she's done and how it impacts women and what we do today. So if you're a woman in insurance or you have women in your agency that you think would benefit from this, we'll have more details coming soon. So please keep a lookout for that. In the meantime, you can, as she said, our members can get 30 minutes free with her to kind of jumpstart and talk about the services that she can provide to y'all. So take advantage of that. Finally, I do want to remind everybody we have that cook-off coming up. If you have not registered for that, we have a delicious day of food and entertainment and fun. We have 14 teams that are already signed up, so hurry and register for that. And unless there's any other questions, that concludes our webinar for today. Make sure you scan that code or click on the link to get that credit, and we'll email you when that hour has been filed.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Same. Thank you so much, Carey.
Bye-bye.
Bye.